Hi everyone, I'm Charles Smith, and today I will be talking about my question for the Enquiring Minds assignment. So just to start off with my question was, why are there so many people with handicaps, license plates? They aren't disabled and seem to get around just fine. First I'll start with a definition of what disabled is. This definition comes from ADA.org. ADA.org is the Americans with Disability Act. So this website was formed when this act was created to give disabled people the right to park closer and the right to certain other necessities that they need to get around and try to function in society normally. So here's the definition. The ADA defines a person with a disability as a person who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activity. This includes people who have a record of such an impairment, even if they do not currently have the disability. It also includes individuals who do not have a disability but are regarded as having a disability. And also, the last part of the definition, the ADA makes it clear that you cannot discriminate unlawfully against a person with a disability or associated with someone with a disability. Okay, so now I'll start off with my results that I found from my research. Just to touch on the question, most people with the disabilities, they aren't visible. The statistics that I will be giving you are from invisibledisabilities.org. And they all came from an article that says, "Don't judge appearance for accessible parking and other needs." And this article breaks down disabilities into several questions. The first question starts with, why judge a book by its cover? And it talks about how up to 70% of people with disabilities, you cannot tell. And now I'll start with something that they answered. The question was, what is an invisible disability? And it talks about how people often mistake disabilities for lost limbs or broken limbs or something like that. When the term disability is any physical, mental, or neurological condition that limits a person's movement, reaction, senses, or their ability to perform an activity. So during my findings and from this article, and just to mention the author real quick of the article is Alan Abbey, and she's been a writer for this website since 2008. So we'll just talk about the article now. So once again, like I mentioned earlier, the article focuses on invisible disabilities. So this is why people think a lot of people that use handicap spots or disabled spots aren't disabled or don't have a handicap, because you can't see their handicap. Many conditions are not seeable conditions, such as if you have heart or lung damage that you can't walk from a far parking spot to a store. So then you can park in that disabled spot. That's one thing that happens. Or any activity worsens your breathing or your ability to function, you can be considered disabled. So then you can also park in that spot, to where if you're seeing a person walk in a store for 30 steps and then they get to the store and you're like, this person is fine. Well, maybe if they took 50 steps, they wouldn't be fine. So that's what makes them disabled. Moving on to my next point. My next point is people who are with somebody that's disabled. 30% of people have caregivers who they live with, who takes care of them. The disabled person does not have a car. They can't drive on their own. So then you might see the person driving or parking in a spot. They aren't disabled, but maybe they're picking up someone that is disabled. So then you see them and see, why are they here? They're not disabled. Yes, they are, and they can't be judged unlawfully or ticketed because they do have a handicap sticker and they are caring for somebody that are disabled. So they fall underneath the ADA Act as disabled, which is very odd to me because they can be normal, but because they are the permanent or the caregiver of a person, they are considered disabled and are allowed to park in those spots as well. Now, one thing that has been fine is that has been found in this article is that sometimes police will give people who aren't disabled or are using this car as a means to transportation for a disabled person a hard time, because even though they are taking care of the disabled person, if they're letting the disabled person walk in the store or drop them off at the front of the store, then parking, that's not what the handicap sign was used for. So that's not good. Also, I'll talk about spaces that are designed that are handicapped. So, if a handicap spot, if a store does not have a handicap spot and a person parks in a fire lane, some people might blow at you, or if you're waiting in front of the store and you park there and run in real quick, people might blow at you or give you a hard time. If a store does not have a handicap spot for you to park in and you're disabled, you are allowed to park in here. So if people are saying, no, they're not fine, they can park somewhere else, they don't have to wait in front of the store. If they're considered disabled, they can park on this fire line and not get towed or not have any fines. And lastly, if you have any past surgeries or any PTSD, you are considered handicapped, even if you do not have a sticker and you can park in a spot. One thing that this article talks about is how people with PTSD or any trauma from the Navy or Army or whatever service they are in, they do not like to get handicap stickers, or sometimes they forget to place their handicap stickers. So this is why a high percentage, well, this high percentage, according to this article, of 17% of people with PTSD that are considered disabled put it on their license plates. Stuff broke.